Hi, it's Paul Garnes, executive producer of Queen Sugar, and we're here to talk about season 7, episode 5 of Queen Sugar. And today I am joined with two wonderful guests. One is, I would say, the person single-handedly responsible to, with Ava, craft a look of a show that wasn't typical to a way that TV shows were looking before, especially in the cable space. And so many people comment on the look of Queen Sugar. And today we're joined by the person whose eye crafted that, Antonio Calvache. How are you, Antonio?
Very good.
Glad to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.
And then secondly, we are joined by one of the characters that has really crafted out a big portion of the heartbeat of the show. So many of the fans of the show, and even us who work on the show, love this character so much because the no-nonsense kind of matriarch point of view that she brings as Aunt Vi could not be done any other way than by Tina Lifford. Hey, Tina.
Hey, Paul Garnes. How are you?
Good. Happy to have you here.
I'm
with
happy
us.
to be here. Happy to be with the visual master and the great team leader.
Well, today we're going to talk about episode 5, but before we really jump into episode 5, it's always wonderful to kind of dig a little further back and talk about just Queen Sugar as a whole, the impact of it, the experience of it. Both of you have been on the show since day one. So Antonio, what do you like? What is your reflection of Queen Sugar after all these years?
Well, it has been really interesting to be working on the same project for 7 years. It's something that doesn't happen. I couldn't imagine this will happen. I came to Queen Sugar from the feature film universe, so I was used to be working on a project for several months and then moving on into something completely different with a different set of challenges and style. Here, Queen Sugar gave me the opportunity to come back every year and explore and refine and redefine and perfect what we had done the previous year. And it was very interesting. It was very gratifying. It gave me a sense of family with the team, with the cast, with many of the crew members that stayed with us. And I really got, I found myself really being part of this adventure, this project, this story, and this family. It was great to be able to come back and, you get to know those locations, so you know what time to shoot, you know how to approach, what shots look best. You get to know the cast, what type of camera angles and lighting angles work best for them. I mean, it gives an opportunity really to go deep into the work and perfect it in a way that I could never do with a feature film.
Well, it's been wonderful having you there all 7 seasons. Like you said, it's very rare for a cinematographer to stay on a show the whole run of the series. So I think that we really benefited from you pushing that look every year. And the show always felt fresh and looked great. And it was, wonderful. I'm going to come back and talk to you about one of those things in a second. But first, I just want to ask Tina Lifford. You showed up in New Orleans. You hadn't really worked, I don't think, with any of us yet, right? We were kind of a new group to say, hey, I'm going to go
Totally new.
jump in. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that in the audition, when you audition and you leave an audition, usually an actor will take their sides with them. That's the paper that we, use for the audition, the script pages, right? And I walked out of that audition and threw my sides away because I thought, they're not interested, right? So to be on a plane just less than a month later, headed down to New Orleans, that was quite the experience. But, over the 7 seasons, we've been able to witness the Ava effect in terms of so many of the visual parts of Queen Sugar. But there's a behind the scenes effect that is equally stunning. I mean, when you think about, working for 7 seasons with people who in the beginning were strangers, total strangers, and yet for 7 seasons, you get up and you go to work and you have fun. That's extraordinary. And then on top of that, I'm working with a cast where there is not one single actor that isn't extraordinary, and not one brings their ego to the work, right? The only way you see the ego is we all have a shared commitment to those words that are on the page and making them come alive. And there's just such a beautiful respect. And then, I hate to sell the truth in front of you, but our leadership on the ground, getting up and coming to work every day, it was an environment where fun and play and we all knew where we were. We knew what our responsibilities were. We had latitude to play, and then when it was time to work, we all showed up. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, one of the most profound moments for me was after we had done the pilot. Antonio, you shot the first 2 episodes with Ava directing. It was the first time you as a group of actors had worked together. We were working in this, foreign environment, telling a story that people didn't know about these black farmers in southern Louisiana.
We didn't know.
That anyone knew, yeah. And then we did a screening. We were maybe 4 or 5 episodes in by then, but it was the first time that you as a cast had seen it. I don't know, you had probably seen some in color correction.
Which is screening? Are you?
We did that screening. It was, I don't know, it was
at one of the...
Yeah, somewhere in New Orleans, like a screening room or something.
Yeah.
It was right, it was before Essence. It was before kind of the broader audience was able to see it, even before it aired. But one of the things that the show did that was unique and I think a little scary was the show really gave a moment for the characters, for the story, for the visuals to breathe. There was this almost uncomfortable moment of what happens after the conversation, right? Like when you make that statement, in TV, a lot of times we lean into the drama of the statement. But then there was like this brief, 2 or 3 breaths after on Queen Sugar, where you really had to live in that moment. You really had to live with that character in that environment. And I felt like that was pretty unique. You hadn't seen that on a lot of TV shows. For you as an actor, what was that like where you get to the end of the scene and no one said cut?
Yeah. It was unusual, right? And then actually watching it in that screening, it was the experience of being part of a really beautiful hot summer breeze, right? Where that breeze comes in and you feel it and it's languid and it doesn't rush on and you have to just be there with it. And that's the thing at that screening that I was most taken by. It's like, we're not rushing here at all. And visually, it was a perfect match. The visuals, the tapestry that Antonio and Ava painted, along with the slow moving, we're taking our time because this is life. That was just beautiful.
And we kind of invented a term, which you guys, when you're shooting, we would always be chasing the clock. And, my job in the early days was to police the clock. And Antonio would always hate to see me walking over, like, Antonio, we're running out of time. What are we doing here? But we would always save something that became kind of the normal conversation, a Queen Sugar frame. And, Antonio, why don't you describe what that is, what a Queen Sugar frame is?
Well, that was developed as we were shooting the first 2 episodes. I do remember the first Queen Sugar frame very well. We were shooting an exterior at Nova's house, which was a practical location at the 9th Ward. And there was this scene when what was his name? The pot dealer.
Reed.
Yes, when Reed comes to see Nova. We had a reverse shot on Reed arriving, getting off his car. We had a wide shot framed, and Eva asked, can you tilt up? Okay, we tilted up more. So we tilted more. No, more. So we ended up framing that shot with Reed, just the head of Reed, just the roof of the car at the bottom of the frame. That was it. That was the start of the lots of headroom style, which is one of the trademarks of the series. And what we mean when we say a Queen Sugar shot, it's a lot of headroom.
So now when people are watching the show, they can say, hey, that's a Queen Sugar shot, because really that language lasted throughout the whole series.
Actually, it wasn't called like that before. I referred to it as an artistic shot. But I realized when I said we need an artistic shot, the ADs felt a bit like this is icing on the cake, this is not necessary, we should move on. And eventually, I remember I had a conversation with Eva when we were shooting the episode 3 of season 1. And she told me, Antonio, you cannot leave a scene without one of our frames. It's unnegotiable. So I came up with changing the concept. And instead of calling it an artistic shot, calling it a Queen Sugar shot.
That was great because everyone knew what that was.
After that, no AD will come complaining about we needed an additional setup.
The Queen
because
Sugar
that
shot
was the signature of the series.
That's really sort of a beautiful branding story, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful branding story. It's the essence of branding.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my personal favorite things about Queen Sugar, and this I think I will be maybe outside of Antonio just because of the reason that why he likes it might be different than me. But I really enjoyed our Monday morning shots at Vashery, which were see, Tina's already rolling her eyes, which always required for us to do like a 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. call, which means that actors had to be in hair and makeup by like 4 a.m., just so that we could get the beautiful or the pretty light in the morning. It was my favorite thing ever to have those early morning shots. No one, I don't think, liked them except for me. I don't know if you liked them. I know you liked the light.
I fought for it. All the time I was asking for it. I didn't enjoy driving at night for an hour to the location, but it was the best time for that location. Whenever we had a scene looking out into the cane field or a scene taking place in the cane field, early morning was the prettiest light. And it was just hard because being so far away from New Orleans, it meant for us living at 5 a.m. for a 6 a.m. Call, but for the actors,
it was always tough. And it seemed like that first season, it was like every time we were out there was all of you all. it was every actor, everybody had to be in at 3:30 a.m., which means you had to be picked up at 2:30 a.m.
Kill me. That is probably the only part of the 7 seasons that I could have done without. And yet, when you watch each episode, the vashery stuff is just so extraordinary, right? It's just the landscape adds so much to the texture of not just the visual texture, but the storytelling. So, yeah, you take the good with the bitter with the sweet.
And that was one of the hardest parts of season 7 for me, which is we didn't go much.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot out there.
Yeah.
We missed that.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, and yet,
I think Tina's gonna try to spin this as a positive.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did something under that extraordinary tree, which memorializes the tree, and that tree that is in Aunt Vi's backyard.
Yeah, always was a special thing.
Just extraordinary.
Yeah,
I mean, there's such feeling and history, in that tree. So I'm really glad that that's probably the first time in all 7 seasons that we really sort of made the tree a central part of a scene.
Yes, that was in episode 1, right?
Yeah.
The celebration of
dedication,
Baby
yeah.
True.
Though, if you don't remember, I'm sure you do, but it's when Vi and Hollywood were getting married. Originally, it was supposed to be under the tree.
Yeah.
But the weather just didn't
Yeah.
cooperate.
Yeah.
It was one of those nights. It was the finale, and it rained,
Yeah,
and we sat out there all night waiting for the rain to cease. But we were going to shoot that wedding under the tree. And
And it wound up being a beautiful wedding
It
in
did.
the front yard.
It did.
Yep. But that makes season 7 and the scene under the tree even more special.
It did. So as we transition into talking about the episode, I think as this episode starts, we find Nova having a dream about her parents. And Nova's always had this spiritual connection to her past, to the land, and always had this longing to have understanding about what those early days were and what they should mean to her. And Aunt Vi has always been kind of there to help her kind of wrestle through those, because unlike Nova, Aunt Vi did live through them. But what do you think about like this concept of Nova always seeking out some truth about her past?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, Paul, because, just in terms of the storytelling, and then in terms of good storytelling, speaking to the lives of viewers, everyone is wrestling with trying to figure something out, right? And most people find themselves frustrated because, like, where do you go for those answers? But Nova has such a belief in her connection to more than what she just sees that it helps a person who is rather troubled. I mean, Nova has a lot of stuff that she is working out in, the 7 seasons. And for her to be able to believe in the ancestors and to believe that her mother and father are present really helps her make some big decisions. And I think ultimately it points her in the direction that she is going in season 7.
Mm-hmm. And Antonio, I think one of the most famous shots on Queen Sugar was season 1, episode 1, was the shot of Nova and Calvin in bed, where we showed kind of, the mahogany goodness of Rutina Wesley in a way that people were really like awestruck over. Just not only it was very tasteful, but the look of it. What is that process for you working with, Queen Sugar has actors of all hues, of trying to find that balance of, shooting like Nova, who is a chocolate actress, with Calvin, who's a, Caucasian man, or, with one of the other actors that could be a much lighter tone. Trying to find that balance because, frankly, one of the criticisms of people who film or watch shows with African Americans is that not a lot of attention is spent on how to light them and that they don't look as good. People look too dark or they don't have, variation in their skin. What is that process like for you trying to find that balance?
Well, I had a chance to work with African American casts before Queen Sugar. I had done feature films and music videos with actors of all kind of skin tones. So I already came knowing how to approach it. Back then, when I was shooting film and I was shooting these kind of scenes with darker skin actors and mixing scenes with more Caucasian actors, it worried me a lot because back in film, it was a matter of trust. You didn't see what you were doing until you saw the results. And I realized that it's the darkness in the skin tone is only when you have very direct light. When you use very soft light, then the skin tone shines. And that was the beauty in photographing Rutina and photographing them all, is I knew that direct light doesn't help. Because direct light is where you have problems of compensating different skin tones. But whenever I stick to soft light, it was okay because it wasn't so much black against white. It was different hues. And that was my lighting trick through the whole season. And my lighting crew knew about it. So we were always working with large lighting units, soft lighting that will just bring the best out of the darker skin tones.
Well, I think it was effective because people always talk about that sequence. And I think overall, the melanin comments about Queen Sugar always comes up in the Twitter feeds and on Instagram. So it's a compliment to trying to figure that out because it's not something that a lot of people take the time to do. Tina, one other thing that I always thought, deserved more conversation was this relationship that Vi has with Hollywood. It's gone through a lot of growth and dimensions from dating to marriage. It's had its challenges from financial, from exterior forces coming in, to health, and they're still right there together. But this season we have a little bit new piece to it where we have these two boys that Vi has really kind of taken to. And it's, Hollywood seems to be, kind of going for it. But it does seem like it's a new push of Vi trying to figure something out. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that dealing with children straight on is so appropriate for season 7, right? Because the very first shot where you see Aunt Vi in season 1, she is sitting on that porch, on that banister, and she's like, waving her feet like a young girl. But what she's looking at are two things that she absolutely loves, and that's Hollywood and blue. And then, throughout the seasons, you experience her different pains around children. So to come to season 7 and to have these two unlikely candidates, you might say, pop up in her and Hollywood's space is extraordinary. And I think that Hollywood and Vi's history they really have landed in a place where they are the best of an old shoe for one another, right? Or a comfortable robe. They are the best of that. And they both are coming to this question of these boys and children in a way that we haven't seen with Hollywood, and a way that Vi has consistently tried to pack it away. And it's not packed away. And for them to both be coming at this from different places is exciting.
And one of the things that I found very interesting, especially this season, because people have really noticed it, and even in this episode, is things start to develop on how they can keep these boys in the house. Vi seems to be, she treats threats very binary. Everything's existential. Like, she doesn't play around. People are always like, uh-oh. When something goes down with Landry, they're like, uh-oh, here comes Vi. She ain't gonna go for it. What is it about Vi's personality? Like, she gets stuff done, but why do you think she's like that? Why is everything, black or white, yes or no? She doesn't seem to have a lot of room for variation.
Well, she's gotten better. She over the season.
Because even with Darla in the beginning,
it
was just like, nope, not gonna mess with her. She's not coming in my house.
Yeah. No, she's gotten better. You actually have seen her grow, but Vi was an abused woman. So she loses her parents, which meant everything to her. Mm-hmm. She finds herself in a marriage that is abusive and nobody knows. And then she loses her protector, her brother. So this is a woman who has to hold on to things very tightly. She doesn't have room for, flexibility, because she spent so many years having to hold on to herself to survive. Mm-hmm. And it is through her relationship with Hollywood that she begins to experience a little bit of that thawing. And then through that, and just the fact that life isn't going to stop and make you comfortable. And she's so committed to all of the kids, and their lives are completely, not under her control. Mm-hmm. She has to learn how to let people be. It's hard. It's really hard. But she finds that when she takes a breath, she does get something better from it. So she's trying.
Okay. She's trying. What do you think, Antonio? What do you think with all of our characters have gone through so much as we've kind of get to season 7 and we're trying to wrap up some of these storylines? I know visually every season you seem to have kind of a goal that you want to happen. Is there a series kind of visual wrap up for you? Is there a way that this all starts to lead towards the series finale?
I think maybe there was a sense of going back to season 1 and get back to the essence of when we started. And we actually did pick up some references from season 1 when we did the last episode, where you will see there are like shots that we brought back to life. So yeah, I think that there was a sense of closing the circle.
We often, like when Ethan was here, we were talking about, one of the days when we know on Queen Sugar is going to be a long day, when we have like the dinner scenes and we have to work our way around the table shooting all the actors. In this episode, we have a moment where Nova gets everyone together to tell them, one of the big arcs of the show, that her book was going to be turned into a movie. I love that sequence because you can see the tension brewing within Darla. We know as an audience, because we've been watching what's been going on with her, that this has been happening right over time, that this past piece of her life is still there and it's going to catch up with her. But in this particular scene, you really see her get to a point where she boils over. And, you know, shooting those sequences is always a lot of work because you got to capture all the glances. You got to get, you know, who notices what. And Vi's always, that character is kind of like clocking someone's, you know, energy. But what is that process like for you? How do you approach those days when we know we have a huge emotional piece? There are a lot of actors. We're shooting around a space. Is there a way that you approach it that, you know, getting in that morning where it's like, okay, here's how we get it done?
Well, yes, definitely it's about our priorities. When we have scenes where we have a lot of work to do and not so much time, it's setting up our priorities so we get to the meat before. I often ask the directors, and they usually check with the cast who we start covering first. And usually we want to start with those that have the heaviest load in their performance. I don't remember which order we followed in this scene, but yes, it was great to see the dark cloud coming over Darla. It was a lot of drama, and you can see her while the rest of the family is like excited, celebrating, questioning, talking about Nova turning her book into a movie. She's in her world, and actually there is this shot that it's a lot of fun where the bottle of wine is in front of her, and
she looks at
it just looks like she's staring at the wine, and is she going to go for it? And she leans forward to grab it, and then we reveal she's grabbing a glass of water. There is more about this cloud getting over Darla in the next episode as well, that we had visual fun dealing with that. And the end of the episode, I love the end of the episode because it's just all about Darla getting back to this dark side that she cannot get rid of. It's when we see Ralphangel and her in her new home, and then gets the call.
He gets the phone call.
And she walks from the warmth of their new home. She walks outside, and it's all blue lights. So it's from the warmth to the cold, and that's where the episode ends. That moment I love. But going back to the scene you were describing, yes, that's a great scene with the whole family, and then it turns into a confrontation of Nova and Darla in the bedroom, which was a lot more intense and a lot more challenging to shoot it without interfering with them, which at this point, that's really our main goal from a camera point of view, is not to interfere with the performances and just take a step back and cover them without affecting their performance.
It certainly is a tense scene.
I have to say that, you know, one of the favorite joys of an actor is watching another actor kill it. And Darla's blow up, Bianca Lawson's blow up, which actually happened outside of, in the room with just her and Nova, but I got to see it. Oh my word. I have never seen such a brilliant, seething, explosive, but contained blow up in film. She was magnificent.
She was
magnificent. And I just kudos to Bianca Lawson. It's beautiful.
Well, I love it because there's so much nuance to it. And there's she plays it with this subtle disbelief that they're even talking about this.
Yes.
Yes. And it was great because it's a little bit of a, Vi kind of jumps in it like it's going to be a problem. And then she's like, oh, that sounds wonderful. And then, people are counting up the money. People are talking about who's going to play who. But all the time it's just brewing, and she just can't believe that this is happening and that this is even a conversation. And Nova keeps saying, but only if everybody's for it. But we know before everyone else does that Darla's going to have a problem with it. And it was really such a brilliant moment.
It really was.
And it's a great arc to the Darla character, which we've seen from the lows, right? From the point where nobody would even talk to her, that, she was just the outcast of the family. And now, Darla and Vi are like, partners. She's working with Vi to really like get that business going. She's really made such a great arc.
And the way in which Darla says, I said no, really speaks to what you've just said, Paul, because she would have been sort of overlooked seasons earlier. But when she says, I said no, that her voice matters. She knows that her voice matters. And in that moment, it's shut down.
She found her voice for sure. Like, it meant something. It stopped the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, Nova usually is the one who's going to fight. And, and Nova even was like, whoa, look, you're right. No, we're not going to do it if you don't want me to do it. It was a powerful moment, really powerful moment. All right, let's also talk a little bit about our dear Ralph Angel. You, Violet, have always tried to help find the best for Ralph Angel, but now he finds himself in a predicament. The farm is gone. He's trying to rally the troops around the co-op, but it seems like Landry is there every step of the way, foiling it. Why does the family just stick with Ralph Angel this long?
That is a cultural statement, right? That's a cultural question. It is so deeply embedded in at least the Black women that I know. It's so deeply embedded to want the best and bend over backwards for the men that we love and the men that we care for and the men who need us. And that is where Vi finds herself with Ralph Angel. Ralph Angel represents so much, to Vi. He is Ernest,
Yeah.
He is her promise to Ernest. He is her first blue, and then he gives her blue. There's just so much of Vi that is committed to this man flowering. And before Queen Sugar, before episode 1, or maybe let's say season 3, before season 3, Vi would have been one of those women who would say, I would die for you, and it be real, right? So, yeah, it's in the DNA. It's just in who she is.
So we have a few themes that this season, kind of overarching themes, and I'm going to say the themes, and then you guys tell me kind of what you think about that. How does that relate to the show? One is new beginnings, letting go. Who wants to take it?
Shall I don't know. New beginnings. Yeah, it's interesting because the new beginnings, the completions make room for the new beginnings. And I feel like season 7 is setting up the new beginnings by completing what is left undone.
And as we talk, even with what Antonio kind of talked a little bit about the last scene, where Darla has this phone call, and it's kind of an ominous phone call where this past is starting to catch up to her. She thought she had a new beginning. She has this new child with Ralph Angel, the love of her life. Blue is there and happy. She's recovered. She's finding success in business. And yet, her new beginning is kind of soiled by the specter of her past.
And I would say that her need to complete the past allows her to actually actualize all that is her possibility. But she can't do it without what all of us experienced with that book. That book gave everybody the opportunity to complete, except for Darla, in the way that she's going at it now. And so it's the completion that sets the stage for the new beginning.
Yeah. So we'll see what that leads to with her. One other theme that I'll throw out there, maybe Antonio will jump in quickly and won't even let you answer this, Tina.
I won't answer.
Legacy, leaving your mark.
Well, I think that defines a lot of things in this series. It defines the storyline, what these characters are trying to do, and it defines what Eva and all of us are trying to do with this series. It definitely defines my motivation to stay in this series for 3 seasons. Definitely, it's leaving behind a legacy and a mark, something that will impact now and in the future.
Yeah, I definitely think the parody of what we all want from the show, just in our different ways that we participate in a legacy, and what we were able to do with directors, and what we were able to do with telling stories about characters that people often don't look at as leads, telling stories that people often overlook as unimportant. But beyond that, I think there was a legacy that we all hoped came out of the process. And both of you guys played a huge role in that. So thank you. So there is a part of this where...
Say something.
Oh, well, Tina, you've never been shy not to say something.
I think that asking Antonio that question is so perfect, because for 7 seasons, Antonio has very, very intense eyes. And for 7 seasons, he looked at a scene, he looked at the landscape, and what was happening in his mind. You could see that every single choice was legacy, even if it wasn't processed as legacy. But it all mattered. It all was important in a way that he did not have time for the noise and the riffraff that was going on around him, because he had a very important job to do with that light right there.
So my favorite, Antonio's heard me tell this story before.
I love that.
Apologize, Antonio, for doing an Antonio representation of an accent. So you have to, I pre-apologize for this. But you probably have never heard this story. Antonio is probably tired of hearing this story.
Okay.
But we were shooting the premiere of season 2. Was it 2? I think it was the premiere of season 2. Kat Candler was directing. And we had been scouting, and probably one of the scourges of Antonio was when I take him to an office building to shoot. Hated office buildings. He's like, can't we shoot on the first floor? It's like, it's an office building. But anyway, we were up on like the 31st floor of an office building. And I'm going to equally offend Kat Candler by representing her in the story.
Okay.
So it's Antonio, Kat Candler, and myself. And we walk into this conference room. And Kat Candler, and this is my Kat Candler thing. She's wearing her overalls, and she's like, "Oh,
Pigtails.
it's so lovely. I love it so much. What do you think, Antonio? Don't you think it's lovely?" And Antonio, who has his thing, not clasping hands, is stroking the beard. And he's standing there looking at it, and he says, "It's terrible. Terrible." And Kat Candler looks so hurt. She's like, "Oh." It's one of my favorite moments because it captured Antonio. Now, we shot it, and it's gorgeous. But, Antonio, what was going through your mind? Do you remember that moment?
I don't know if I said that it's terrible. I don't think so. That doesn't sound like me. But I was probably just thinking about how the hell we were going to shoot there. In a 37, whatever, story high building.
The vein of his existence.
All surrounded by windows. And,
it's true.
And no way to control it.
Not at all.
So nobody was seeing what I was seeing, which is...
It was terrible.
It's a freaking nightmare.
On the day of the shoot, we were going to regret being there.
It looked wonderful. We made it through it. It was a great moment, but it was one of my favorite Antonio stories.
It's a good one.
So we have this phase of the podcast that we called Stump the Guest, where I get to ask a question, and you guys have to try to answer the question. Now, I will try to make this as difficult as possible, but answerable. So.
I'm not good at stuff like this. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. Antonio, you might find this easy because you have good recall from all the different seasons. But this season, we haven't seen it yet, but there is just like it happens in New Orleans, an event that happens every so often that you have to try to work around in your personal life and your worker life. But in season 1, we found ourselves in a tough schedule. We found ourselves trying to figure out how to make the show. We were still trying to work on how to make the show work. And so we did we proposed something story-wise that was very limiting for the DP. But we decided to shoot a 2-episode run about a particular event. Do you remember what that event was?
Yes.
What was it?
It was a storm.
Yes, it was a storm. It was the storm episode that Kat Candler actually directed. That was the big moment where Darla kind of tells her truth. And we shot it all on stage because we were trying to get back on schedule and found that the storm was such a creative way to do it. And it turned out to be a lovely episode.
Yeah, that was our bidwis or what? No, spades. That was our
Yes,
spades. Yes, our
yeah.
spades. Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun.
That was lots of fun.
And for you, Tina Lifford, as you know, I'm one of the probably premier chooser of automobiles in Queen Sugar. I choose like all the cars for the actors. That's like my thing. And we had lots of discussions about vehicles. And for an actor, you probably may not even remember the different vehicles. But we put Vi in a particular car in season 1, and it was a particular color. Do you remember what those were?
A green Mustang.
Oh, wow. But what other aspect of it? What was the special part of it?
I think it was convertible.
It was.
Yeah,
okay.
it was convertible with a loud engine.
Yeah, we were trying to match Vi's personality.
Yeah.
Well, look, it was wonderful having you guys here to talk about episode 5 and Queen Sugar in general. It's so wonderful to relive these moments, and it's kind of sad that we won't be shooting it again, for another season. But I'm so wonderfully grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you both on all the seasons we got to do. And I look forward to the upcoming episodes, which, have so many more twists and turns. But this is it for our podcast. I loved having you guys here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Garnes. Great to see you, Antonio.
Good to see you, Tina. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.